Everybody can see my screen. Okay, perfect. Okay, yes. What exactly is acid bases? Can somebody tell me what exactly is acid bases? Okay. Electrolyte imbalance is is something else because electrolyte is about you have you have natremia, we have we have hypokalemia, we have kalemia, we have hyperkalemia, we have phosphate, we have all of that that is electrolyte. But electrolyte imbalance and acid basis imbalance is two different things. But almost they are different on some part of it, but not on the other part. Let me explain. Okay, for example, if you have a for to simplify it, if I have an imbalance for an acid basis like a ABG guys, and my patient is going down, so everything that's going down, what is it, guys? Everything that's going down, what is it? Acidosis. So for electrolyte, for example, I will give you an example for electrolyte. Potassium K, potassium. The potassium K is not going in the same direction with the acid bases. If the patient going down, so the electrolyte or the potassium going the opposite way. Okay, so they not always go the same way, the same direction. That's where they are different. So ABCs guys, yes, there's imbalance. There is a disorder. There are disorders, and electrolyte imbalance. There are also disorders. Okay, so everything that going up. What is it, guys? Everything that going up. Alkalosis. I know it's my screen. Okay, no problem. Everything that going up is alkalosis. So everything everything that is long, what is it? If it's long, respiratory, perfect. If it's not long, perfect, metabolic. So if when is metabolic alkalosis? When it is metabolic alkalosis? Is metabolic alkalosis is right there. So metabolic alkalosis, we know that is when we have a prolonged, for example, they give you some example when you have a prolonged vomiting, okay, or you have a suctioning. So when we have that, that's metabolic alkalosis. Why they say that? Okay, why they said is alkalosis? Because we know that when they say acidosis, we saw acid, right? And when we talk about alkalosis, we talk about alkaline, and that's mean we talk about bases. So if we lose one, so we're gonna have more on the other side. So for example, if I losing acid, when you're vomiting, we have a prolonged vomiting, so you're losing acid. So anytime you lose acid, that's mean you're not gonna be acidosis anymore. So what gonna happen? You're gonna be metabolic alkalosis. Okay, so that's why they say metabolic alkalosis. And by default, if you was in the class and you have some question like that, by default, what you gonna say? By default, what you gonna say? Metabolic acidosis. Perfect. Perfect. And anytime they talk about MAC, Cosmol, or they can say Cosmol breathing. Anytime you see that, we always remember they're talking about metabolic acidosis, okay? Anytime they talk about co-small or co-small breathing, remember they talk about metabolic acidosis. By default, if we don't, we was in the class and they ask you a question about ABGs, so remember by default in metabolic acidosis. Perfect, wonderful. Anytime I'm talking about ventilation, why I'm using the word ventilation? Is it for metabolic or respiratory? Respiratory, perfect. So if I have any question like that, they're talking about ventilation, and they give me something about metabolism, and they give me something about respiratoryism. So which one I should choose? I would choose the question they talk about respiratory, right? Anything about respiratory, I'm going for that answers, for those answers, for respiratory. Okay. So anything I have now, if I have like four questions to choose, so if I have two, we talk about metabolic, so I have to, those two is already disqualified. So anytime they're talking about ventilation, they're talking about um, respiratory. So we know that in the machine, or they can say mechanical ventilation or ventilator. There's an alarm on it. Okay, you have to know the alarm system. Okay, we know there's a high pressure alarm, and we know there's a low pressure alarm that we teach last time. We saw it last time, and a few weeks before or few months before. We know that anytime we heard the alarm or the machine is sounding, and you have to check to see if there's any kink in the tubing. If there's any kink in the tubing, you just unkink it. If there's any, let's see, one moment. Yes, first it is any kink in the tubing, you unkink it. If there's any waters in the tube, you have to empty it. Okay, if there's mucus in the mucus secretion in the airway, we just have to position the patient for the mucus to go away. So we're gonna do some part, not today, on positioning. Positioning is a key, on respiratory. It's a great thing on the respiratory. Okay, so positioning a patient, there's a lot of positioning for any type of disorders. There's a lot of positioning. We're not gonna go over them today, but we're gonna go over later or another time. Okay, perfect. So we know there's a low pressure alarm. Low pressure alarm is like you're not going to don't press or push, push the air too hard. You just push you just have to do just a little work on the respiratory system of the patient. Okay, for the low pressure alarm. So if it's go off, what you gonna do? You check the main tubing. So if it's disconnected, you reconnect it. You check the oxygen saturation sensor tubing. You check that too. You check everything that have to be checked in the mechanical ventilation. You have to check it. So when you talk about ventilators, remember for ABG guys, when you talk about ventilators, anything that is up, we already know that's alkalosis. So if the patient is alkalosis, in my mind, I already know that this patient is overventilating. If it is overventilating, which system I'm going to use on the mechanical ventilation? If the patient is underventilating, so which system I'm going to use on that patient? So you know that if a person is overventilating, He's already have too much. If he's under ventilating, he have just a little air. So you by that you will know which which alarm you're going to use on that patient. Okay, so you know alkalosis is overventilating and acidosis is underventilating. Okay, example: weaning a patient off ventilator should not be underventilated. They need to be ventilated. If they are overventilating, then they can be weaned. So, and that's why, as I said, if the patient is overventilating, you have to wean the patient off the ventilator. Okay, the ventilation. Okay, so just a recap. So we just recap on that. The last time we talked about abuse also. So what is that abuse again, guys? Abuse. What is it? Abuse. Is it a cycle? Is it something psychological, or is it something physiological? Is it something spiritual? What is it? Okay, it's right there. So anytime we talk about abuse, always think we're gonna have a psychological aspect of the patient. We're gonna have to deal we're gonna deal with a psychological, okay, patient. So you know anybody on abuse, they always deny everything. Okay, we're gonna know that. So if you have a patient in abuse, the first thing you're going to see that is on a denial state. So abusers have an infinite capacity for denial so that they can continue their behavior without answering for it. So can you use the alcoholism rules for any abuse? For example, first sight problem in child abuse, gambling, or cocaine abuse is denial. So that's over and over we say it. We're gonna deal with denial. When the person is in abuse, we're gonna deal with denial. Okay, there's different type of denial. What happened? We have to know what happened. If it's a loss, you know, because we have to deal with the patient. So because we have to deal with the patient, we have to find out what caused the denial. Okay, so you know if it's denial, we have two things to do. We have to comfort the patient. But if you see after you do your assessment, you see that it's a loss. The person in a denial state because of a loss or a grief. So now we have to support the patient, not confront the patient. You have to support the patient. We talked about that last time, and we talked about dependence, codependence, dependence. So when the abuser gets somebody else to do everything that they want, okay, they want the person to do. Codependence, when after for me, if the person keep using me to do what they want, but not what I want, by doing so, I'm losing myself. Psychologically, I'm gonna lose myself. I'm gonna lose my self-esteem. So I'm gonna be the codependence on the person, on the abuser. Okay? So the abuser is dependent. Is dependent on me all the time to do everything that they want. But for me, by always say yes, 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 never say no, no, no. So I'm going in the meanwhile, I'm gonna lose myself. I'm gonna lose my self-esteem. I'm gonna lose of who I am. Okay, so that's a dependency and codependency. Okay, so how, as a nurse or in the exam, if they ask you, if you see that, are you gonna treat it? For example, you're gonna teach the patient first to say no, to learn how to say no.